Hey everyone, Tactics here with another plus 10 route walkthrough to help you unlock your teleports and get your Keystone Hero achievement, where this time we're going to be going over Grim BATOL. In this video, I'll be discussing the route that we used, as well as giving you some strategy, tips, and tricks for how to handle the trash and boss encounters and help your group get this key done in time. I've got similar videos out for a bunch of other dungeons already over on my channel and linked in the description below with the rest on the way. So if you are interested in those, be sure to check them out. Otherwise, let's get right into the key here. Where to start, we're taking a bit of a run. We're going to grab this 3-pack and we're going to pull them down into the destroyer below. You may need a couple kicks on that guy. If you don't have a Death Knight, as you can see, I'm going to grip it in. But otherwise, just have a couple kicks to get it in, and then keep kicks on that Mass Tremor, of course, spare kicks going into that Bolt. This is the only caster in this pack. You notice a couple things about this destroyer. The biggest thing is that I pull it down the room slightly, and that's because it allows the group to LOS here. If they need it, they are all doing damage, so they don't want to do that, but it gives the potential, especially on the higher fortified keys or if you have lower gear eye level, to use LOS to prevent that destroyer. And then you can see here, we did lost that pull, and then once this patrol starts coming in, I honestly could have even done it a little bit earlier because they have Death Grip. We add them in and get continued value out of that Bloodlust. And again, just one caster in this pack. Watch the Sues on the Overseer, especially if you pull it in a little early and that dragon gets enraged. Make sure you soothe that dragon, or you really do LOS at that point. And then basically here, we're just kind of chaining through to the next area here. Again, one caster in this pull, not really too much to worry about here. Just beware the bolts once the enrage goes out on it. Again, if you don't have a soothe, make sure you are kicking those things as long as you still have a kick on Mass Tremor. Tanks, be aware, these brutal strikes, they line up there, boom, like that. They were, I believe they were both enraged when that happened. Beware, the brutal strikes, as you get into these packs with 2-3 brutes, can be scary once they start to sync up. So potentially a single target stun or single target stop on one of the mobs when they're synced up, just to desync them, can be good. Pull here again. You may need a kick on this guy if you don't have a grip to pull it in, but just pulling this up together. Here, there's a few casters, so you really just want to make sure you are kicking the Mass Tremors on everything and just spare kicks on the rest. Watching if you get targeted by 2 or 3. You can see there our priest got targeted by 2. We use a stop, and that's just to make sure that you don't get insta-gibbed by 3 bolts hitting you at the same time. But otherwise, it's not as scary as some of the other pulls because things are getting enraged and there's no other form of group damage in the area in the form of dragons. It's all just brutes and the casters. Now we get to the bombing run here, where I've had a lot of questions about what should I be aiming at. The biggest thing is hitting as many mobs as possible with your big missiles. This is a really good overlap here. If you can hit this patrol with either this pack or the 3-pack up there with a big missile, that is very, very good value. Otherwise, the pack in front of the boss is really good value, and then outside of that, it's just the pack on the right side here. That is the next biggest pack. So those are the 3 main packs you want to target with missiles. This one's kind of like the worst one to hit, to be honest with you, but spare missiles can go into it, especially if you've already been missiling down the other packs with a lot of people, right? They will die to some degree. And also, you can see here, I don't waste all my shots. I send a few of them initially, but I spend a lot of time hitting the 2 button, which still does some damage, and it's still value for sure. Hit as many of the smaller bullets as possible, especially if your whole group is doing that. You can actually kill most of every single pack in the area with these dragons. So again, like, we're almost of that one dead, almost of that one dead. This is still a real pull. That pack dies, that pack dies. Excuse me. So we kill almost everything, which is like very, very good value here, and that's kind of what you want to be doing every time. We are going to have like one real pull right here, so we're going to add these earth callers into the pack on the bridge. We basically pull the bridge pack back a little bit here. You see someone just tags it to get them in, and that's because it's kind of annoying to fight over here. These pillars are like LOS, so that's why we pull them up here. And again, I think we get a Mass Tremor going off here. That's into the double bolt. So this is what I was talking about earlier. You want to make sure you're getting your Mass Tremor kicks, and you want to be careful, especially in this pull, which has a lot of casters that can be higher health. Obviously, if you hit them more, they're going to die relatively quickly. But as you saw there, I think our rogue procs his cheat death because the tremor kick went off, which we missed, and then he got 2 bolts to the face. So be aware of that, and then also be aware if they're not dead yet when the Overseer enrages, it can be very, very scary. So you wanted to put some damage in that pack, and then from here, I mean, these packs just kind of fall over, right? Like, it's like all these mobs are basically dead, 10% HP. They're just going to die. The next pack is also like 10% HP with like 2 mobs in it. Yes, randomly the side earth callers can avoid some of the bolts sometimes, the smaller bolts especially. So we just kill that, and then we get into the first boss, which I actually don't remember if we played this boss terribly or not. Generally the biggest thing I see people do is they start filling up the room like this way, like they drop puddles here, they drop puddles here. But then because, at least with the current orientation of my screen, the beams from the dragons come vertically here. What you actually want to do in order to make sure you don't ever get messed over with lack of space is drop your puddles horizontally here across the platform this way and work your way upwards. And that means you're always going to have one of your columns, whichever one is safe, free to run to. So you're going to see, I'm going to pull the boss initially back to this side of the room because, of course, we're starting here. And this is where we want to drop our puddles off initially. The roar goes out, and it always alternates here. You're going to get the puddles next, and then you're going to get the tank buster, and then you're going to get another roar. And between that, there is another set of waves here. So you can see we start dropping it on that end. The tank buster, you want to make sure you always have something running. Kind of depends on what spec you are. Also, if you are a dwarf, you can bleed cleanse that. Once you hit the third stack, instantly cleanse all 3 stacks with your dwarf racial, which is very, very useful. And if you ever do round stuff, which I don't think you should because there's not a ton of take damage otherwise in this fight, you can always call for healer externals. But again, you see we're constantly dropping these puddles over here on this side of the room, and we're going to continuously still have all this space, no matter how long this boss fight goes, to continue progressing down this side of the room as needed. Yeah, see, again, 2 players moving up here. We have 1 drop now in the middle of the room here. That's okay though. But generally we're trying to put it over here as often as possible. I honestly don't even think it would be too bad if you kind of like got halfway and then stopped and went and started dropping on this side, so that you kind of fill in this area and this lane in the middle that you could use if it's like a really, really long boss fight. But generally that's just kind of this fight, not really too much else to it. Keep going. This area, you want to make sure, again, the Beguilers are kind of like the Mass Tremor guys earlier. Each of them spam bolts, but each of them also has an important cast that you want to kick. This cast, because it's a channel, is also technically stoppable if you let it actually begin to channel and then you use a CC on it. So you can do that. Be aware the person who's targeted is going to be stunned for a split second, so that could be problematic with some of the AoEs and frontals in this area. But it is something you can do, and that allows you to instead put more interrupts on the bolts instead of on the Seer Mind cast themselves, which could be beneficial, especially with the overlap this Molten Giant does. He slams down and does the AoE hit Molten Wake here, and that also puts a fire ramp on everyone. So it's pretty dangerous if the bolts are going out too frequently after that happens, so be aware of that. This next pull here is, I would say, optional. This basically, we do this because we have all of our CDs except for the Rogue CDs going into this pull. The Rogue Pop CDs on the previous pull. We've got Mage, Warlock, and PI going into this pull. So what we end up doing is we end up combining these. You don't need to do that. You can just W key, do this pack, and then do this pack. And you see here we have the ping over here, and that is because the boss is going to be patrolling, and so we need to actually fight this pack here in order to not pull the boss. Moving forward here, going over here, I grip the guys in, and these guys will just walk in. Again, you might need to kick on the Earth Caller. This is an especially scary pull for tanks, by the way, so if you are doing this as a tank player, you need significant defensives too, and that is because of the wombo combo of the Molten Giant and these Flame Renders. These guys have the probably scariest tank buster, I would say, in the game right now. They Shadow Flame hit with a stacking Shadow Flame dot. The dot used to be considered a bleed. It's been fixed now. It's no longer a bleed. It's just a dot. And of course, this Molten Giant puts that vulnerability, which we just talked about, on you, on the entire group, and then also as a fire tank buster as well. So it can be very, very scary to deal with. So you want to have something available. I throw up AMS here to prevent the first set of debuffs. But you can see how much damage goes out here. I think the frontal might have clipped us. It's very, very difficult to kind of play in this small area. Boom. Yeah, the frontal clips me right there. So you need to be very, very careful and watch that. And then you have the actual Molten Giant hit as well. So there's a lot going out here. So it's a dangerous pull for sure. You don't need to do this pull, I don't think, to time this key whatsoever. So if you don't have CDs, do not do this pull. If you have all your CDs, you can do it, but it's still quite dangerous, right? And we have the boss. You can kind of start this boss depending on where he is. Here is fine. Also, the corner back here is also fine, because what you can do if you start here is you can go tank him here, go down this way, and then make your way back this way, after in the boss phases. But here is also ideal. You can just go all the way down and do a similar thing, or you can bring this way and then across. You have a lot of space, and because we cleared all the trash, we can also go down to that lower area as well. So initially, you're going to have that frontal. It always goes to the same order here. So you see everyone moving over here to bait that initial frontal into the corner. Boom. I pull them slightly away from the frontal, and now basically people are going to get dots from the Molten Flurry hit, which again, tanks, always use your defensives during the Molten Flurry cast. Make sure you have some sort of coverage for the entire duration of the cast. And people who get the dots, they just want to move back, use a personal, and then also step beside existing fire in order to drop off puddles near that fire. So basically, boom, boom, all these puddles are going here, and we're getting pretty decent space-wise. And then you see after this, because the mace is cast, I move a little bit on top of the fire here, and that's to preserve space. So now he's going to create a bunch of fire already on existing fire. You can run down here. Sometimes boss does a little bit of like a stagger walk. He didn't that time, but he does sometimes. And that, like, really we conserved a ton of space with that, which is very, very nice. And from here, I think we decide, it doesn't really matter. We're going to go down this way, so we can kind of bait the frontal over here, or we can bait the frontal over here. Either works. Which is why we're not too concerned about moving here, because we use that space well, because all the bottom area is clear. So again, we throw that frontal down. I drag the boss a little bit down, and then people are ready to drop their dots either here, up above where you see the Warlock, or down here for the melee, just right beside the stairs. Again, Molten Fury comes out, and we have so much space, and we could do at least another round or two of this with the space that we have. So just, conserve as much space as possible, but even with what we're doing, we have so much extra space, right? And boss is basically dead, so I basically leave. We don't pull this pack right here beside the respawn point, so be aware of that. You can still respawn fine, just need to not immediately hug left. And we're going to instead pull this Molten Giant pull again, which we already talked about. And then we're going into our next Bloodlust pull. This is this used to be way scarier. They nerfed the Warlocks this week, which is the week that we're doing this key. So the Warlocks only put out one curse now. Again, this is a dungeon where you cannot get enough curse spells in your comp. We only have one in our comp. It's not the end of the world. But if you can get 2-3 curse spells in your comp, it's going to make this area and the third boss significantly easier. I would say most high-end groups, like 0.1% title groups, are probably going to aim for 2 curse spells in their comp at a minimum. But it just makes it easier. It's not impossible. You can still dwarf off the curse spell from the Warlocks. You can still heal off the debuff because it's a healing absorb. But either way, we're doing a big pull here. Warlocks all in on the side, and then the pack to the right. And then these guys, I think they pulled by accident. These guys aren't actually in the route here in the pull. We have Lust and all CDs, and yeah, so we do that. I think it was pulled on purpose actually by DPSer, but it's fine. We do it in this pull because it's fine. You don't need to do that. That's probably a couple too many Warlocks. They die fine in this pull because we have so much damage available for this pull. But what I would rather do probably is do the initial setup here, this 3-pull stuff. And then you do this pack with these 2 guys, and then you do the 4-pack there. That's how you would break it up. There's just so much damage in this pull going out here. Again, there's the Shadow Flame guy, so you see I AMS that will hit there. Spare kicks are all going into the Shadow Flame bolts. We have 1 kick assigned to the Beguiler thing that I was talking about earlier, the stun. And then otherwise, it's just people need a defensive, people need to curse a spell, dwarf, and a lot of healing and damage to actually survive that pull. Now, because we did that, I'm just going to pull these 2 guys into the next pull, lose aggro very slightly there and have to regroup and get it, but I'm just going to do these guys together instead. Be aware there is 2 Enforcers in this pack. I think it gets a bit scary. And there's a Flame Render here, so again, I AMS that Flame Render just to make sure I don't get hit by it. And then once the Enforcers start getting scary, we have 1 Soothe on one of them, but the other one is starting to hit me hard, and he gets Kidney there to reset the stacks. Any kind of AoE stun that is longer than I think 4 seconds works. Also soothes work. So those are the 2 things you want to kind of use here to reset Enforcer stacks. Once they start getting like above 6 is kind of scary. So you see there, I just slow the group and back up slightly. He still got in range at the last second. So I just back up out of range here. He dies. And then that's it. But if you can kite here a little bit just for like 4 seconds to actually reset those stacks as needed. Pretty simple pull here. 2 Warlocks and the Lava Bender. This is still, underrated dangerousness because the Lava Benders are here. We have no cooldowns available at this point. The Lava Benders are going to do that heavy pulsing damage. The Warlocks are going to throw out those curses, which we only have 1 curse spell of. And the bolts are going out here, which we want to put any spare kicks we have into. And you see we get I don't know if did we get cleaved by the line there? Is that what happened? Or was just I think it was just overwhelmed by the damage. Yeah, it was just a lot of damage going out there with the pulsing damage and the bolts. Probably could have done more to kick these bolts. It's just, we were very dry on this pull because of the last two pulls, which was a little bit problematic, but that's okay. We have these guys. We had a bad patrol here. These guys are pretty far away, the 2-pack. So that 2-pack honestly can be added onto this pull, or if it's a bad patrol, you can be added onto the other one. It doesn't really matter. Just whatever, it works for your group, works for your group CD timings, works based on the patrol timings, whatever works here. Yeah, this is like the worst possible patrol timing, so we had killed that pack and then it's here, and so we're just gonna kill this 2 solo. Like I said, you can do that as well, right? No rush. We just do this alone. Then there is 2 of these flame renders here, so be aware of that. Tanks. And then we do the double lava bender, which is very, very scary. Prioritize one of these guys is my opinion, so we don't have the whole like double pulsing thing at the same time, kind of similar to Mist of Tyrna's Scythe, except obviously the pulsing damage isn't time limited. It just keeps going. This one actually ends up pushing before we've killed Lava Bender, so I throw the AMZ out. We kill that one quickly, and now we only have the 1 pulsing damage hit going out here. So that is still good, or still scary rather, so be aware of that. Also, we noticed this bug actually here where the frontal starts displaying halfway through the cast, so be aware of that. I think it's based on when you push the boss, or when you push the mob to Ascension. That's just my tinfoil though, but this is an interesting bug where, he'll do his frontal and you only see half the cast animation. Like for half the cast, he faces the target, but there's no animation. So be aware of that. That's what ends up killing our priest here. Not enough time to react because he sees the animation when it actually shows up, which is late, unfortunately, but otherwise, just try and focus one of these guys down. And we go into the boss here. First phase is pretty easy. The interrupts only do tank damage. This ad, be aware. For some reason, disorients and fears, I think that's it. Disorient, fears, maybe some other CC will reset who this mob is targeting. Stuns don't, knockbacks don't, but fears do, disorients do. So be very, very careful. If you use a fear or disorient, it could just refixate to you if you're right beside it, and that would be very, very bad. Instantly die. So be aware of that. Otherwise, this guy spawns, and obviously, we kind of swap to it, except for the person who's getting fixated. We kill it. Boss is phase transitioning, and we end up using the cubbies a little bit on this fight. And I'll explain kind of what that does in terms of helping out with the ad spawn. So basically, at least how we understand the ad spawns, is that it spawns in a radius around the boss. That is where the ads can potentially spawn. And so if you cut off potential spots for the spawns by putting terrain there, it forces them to spawn more clumped up. Now, this is a bit RNG because we're not in the cubby currently, because it's hard to pull immediately into the cubby with the cast time. The ads are already spawning. So you leave open all this area to spawn ads as well, which I think we probably do. Yeah, we get an ad spawn out here, but we get one right there in the cubby. Easy cleave, easy to lock down. And you'll see actually after this is when we get the good one. So that's on a range, so I immediately grip it in to just give for good cleave. And now you're going to see I point the breath into the wall here, just so it's not endangering anybody. And you want to be careful of these tornadoes. They hurt a lot. And now we're going to be moving into this cubby, like all the way into this cubby. Boom. The boss is in the cubby. And this actually gives you a chance to not spawn ads at all. So we get 1 ad behind us. But you can see there is no second ad. The second ad just did not spawn. It spawned on terrain or something like that. And so it's gone. Now, there's a chance that this gets fixed at some point, because obviously it's a little interesting. And I actually had to step out of the cubby there slightly, which is unfortunate. So now we're dodging tornadoes. And because of the tornadoes too, there is the downside of the strategy is if you have melee, it can also be a bit problematic for your melee to actually live tornado hell like this. So again, a potential downside, but it makes dealing with the ads significantly easier. And if your melee are able to dodge, it's not really a big deal. I did pull the ads or the boss slightly out of here, so that's why we still get the ad spawns. But again, immediately clumped up with the boss. Very, very nice for cleave. This gets knocked, and now we're basically just using like a 4-corner strategy where we were in that first corner, spawn a bunch of tornadoes. We're in this next corner, spawn a bunch of tornadoes. We then get knocked across the platform. We have to move back because of these stupid orbs, but I'm going to face the breath away, and we're going to move to the next corner over here where there's no tornadoes whatsoever. And again, similar idea. You can pull them down into this corner. You could also pull up here near the edge, and this has the ability of cutting off some potential spawn points for the ads. Like, look at this. Look how clumped this is because of these spawn points. Now, I've A-bombed them running there. Whoopsies. ends up being fine. Because it ended up picking double range, so not the end of the world. But this is what I'm talking about, right? You can get some really good ad spawns and tornado spawns clustered into one spot by doing this 4 corner strategy. Even if you don't do the cubby stuff, you don't need to do the cubby stuff at all. Just having the boss against a wall and moving to a new corner each time, and then by the time you get back to the first corner, those tornadoes should have despawned. So this is a very, very useful strategy, even if you ignore the cubby shenanigans I was just talking about at the beginning. And then we're moving forward here. Good same old stuff here. The one thing to be aware of in the next pull, Twilight Destroyer with hatchlings. These hatchlings are real mobs, tanks. So don't be fooled by them looking so small and not having a large health pool. These guys melee as if they are a real mob. So when you are going into these packs, you have to have CDs such that expecting that you are taking melees from like 8 mobs, right? So be aware of that. Like I walk in here with IBF up and then I chain IBF into Rune Weapon as an example, right? Like these are very, very scary pulls. Knockback again, you have the ability to LOS around these side things, especially once you have this vulnerability debuff. Make sure you are LOSing if it ever overlaps. If you get this Twilight Flame, make sure you are using a personal here. You can see you use Dark Pack there. His health bar didn't even move. Vulnerability ends and now he's safe. Same deal, moving down here. I think we had an orb spawn, so we delay. Go into this pack. Now you have this Corrupt mob and Corrupt Trucks. This ability hits super hard. A few ways to deal with it. One, obviously, major defensive, especially if you start getting these vulnerability debuffs. If you ever get Corrupt with a vulnerability, a high stack vulnerability, you are in extreme danger. The other, combat drops. Every single combat drop, including Shadow Meld, Feign Death, Invis, Vanish, everything, drops this channel as well. So once the channel actually picks you and starts ticking, you can use those combat drops and the channel just ends. Very, very useful. One of the more useful Shadow Melds this season. Otherwise, though, if you just have Corrupt with no stacks, you're usually not in as much danger. Still, if you have a minor defensive, that's good. Otherwise, healers can just kind of pump you with healing. You can see there, like, this is what it looks like. It's not as scary as the vulnerability one, but still, I mean, it still can be a bit scary. Same thing here. Then we have the double here. This one's especially scary. I get Pain Sup walking into this pack, and then I chain my Rune Weapon off of the Pain Sup. So again, very scary pull to walk into as a tank because of how many hatchlings there are. Right? These hatchlings are all autoing like a real mob. They're very scary. If you need to, you could drop like an Earth Souls or a D&D slow or whatever and kite these mobs for a bit until they all die. But otherwise, just go into this pack with big defensives and use them as needed. AMZ's down here. If anyone gets picked by Corrupt and doesn't have a big CD or doesn't have a drop, there we see there's a Vanish example right there. And then we're into the last boss, which we are going to Lust. I've had a lot of people talking about this boss. I talk about this boss in my hardest boss guide video. It's a tough one. This one had some visibility updates this week, so that the tentacles are more visible on the ground, which is super nice. But otherwise, this is kind of like a mixture of area denial and then these phases of large either group damage or large tank damage. So let's go through this. So initially, you have that channeled hit. You got the Shadow Gale. The channeled hit spawns the tentacles. The Shadow Gale spawns a circle. So you can, again, like I talked about in that video, the hardest boss guide video, when Shadow Gale goes off, I immediately look to the edges of the room, because they create the safe spot when this spawns is the direct center of whatever circle is currently made. So you can see here, I can see the outer edge of this circle. That means I need to go this way to get to the safe spot. Immediately I can tell because of where this circle is rotated, because I know, hey, the center of the circle has got to be far from this edge. So I move down, I'm going to end up moving this way. So I AMS to clear tentacles on the way over. Very value to kind of use your clears as often as possible throughout the fight if they're high frequency, like AMS and like Spell Reflect. Both of those can clear kind of on CD. So I'm going to move here. I see the circle's going to go this way. I AMS to clear that tentacle. I walk through the next tentacle, and now we have no tentacles at all in our area when there was going to be potentially one and one on our way over. Now, I will consistently do this, by the way, every single phase this happens. AMS comes back up, so I will use AMS, and I will clear all tentacles near our space. That is a big value of having something like a DK, but any immunity works, right? Paladin Bubble, that works. If you're a prop paladin, you can spell warding someone out. Rogues can cloak it, that kind of thing. Any kind of immunity like that will work to actually clear these tentacles. And like I mentioned, on top of that, you've also got Spell Reflect, you've got AMS, I think Dragon Breath, that makes you immune to stuns as well. You can breath through a ton of tentacles and just remove all of them. It's really big value there. Otherwise, you can see we're just spreading out throughout here. This is what people would personal. If you are scared, watch your health here, personal. And then we have the Az, and this is where a lot of tanks I've heard, have issues with. And basically, you always want to make sure that you are stacking your defensives in this part of the fight, because again, the hatchlings melee like real mobs. You have a bunch of hatchlings, they're going to be problematic. The Crush Tank Buster is also in this phase, so you just kind of put your defensives here, and it covers both the Crush Tank Buster as well as the add auto attacks. You're going to see here I have a shield up as well as big Vamp Blood for this first Crush, and then I chain that into my rune weapon here in a second while these hatchlings are all grouped up, and then I'm able to get these mobs down. But by the end of this rune weapon, you can notice here too, we did not cleave these ads super hard. These ads were, somewhat cleaved. There was some damage going into them, but we did not kill them all before the Void Surge damage goes out, which means we did not have, 6 stacks or however many ads is here, 8 stacks, whatever, of the Shadow vulnerability on us when that Void Surge happens, which is key. Do not murder these ads before the Void Surge happens. 1 or 2 is not a big deal, right? I think we had 2 die during this. Boom, 1, 2, yeah, died. But having all of them dead for that Void Surge and being fully damage damped for that Void Surge is going to be very, very problematic. Again, you can see the swirlies here from that Void Surge. These are tentacles. Make sure you are watching. It can be hard to see, I know, but a lot of times tentacles spawn right beside the boss here, and that is obviously very problematic if melee or the tank get swallowed up by these new tentacles that spawn from that Void Surge channel, so be very, very aware. The other thing is healers. Healer aggro is very common on these hatchlings because the healer is obviously ramping up to deal with that Void Surge, right? They need to do their prep, they need to do whatever. So what you need to do as a healer is make sure you are basically under the boss, like beside your tank, and tanks, any kind of AoEs you can put, like you see, I put a Death and Decay on the ground here. I hold my A-Bombs limb to use here on this specific one, so I can pull them in with A-Bombs limb and get immediate aggro on it, that kind of thing. Anything you can do to instantly get some sort of small amount of threat on them to prevent them from meleeing your healer, right? Boom, grip that last one in just before is very, very good. And again, healer positioning wise, you want to be near your tank when those ads are spawning. Another example here of the Shadow Gale is you're going to see Shadow Gale's going to go out. Boom. You look around to the edges. Again, I turn around. I see the edge is right here, which means it's going to be near where we are. So that is useful. We're going to do a little turn here. I'm going to probably pop AMS and clear a bunch of tentacles. Boom, AMS, clearing tentacles. Got a couple more in our spot. Boom, they're gone. AMS, super powerful. And like I said, several other abilities can do just that. So it's not just this combo. We only have Cloak, and I don't think he's ever done. He has Cloak coming up in 12 seconds, which means he has not used it this boss fight either. So you have Cloak. You have a lot of other abilities that can clear those tentacles. Getting rid of them, as many as possible, is very, very beneficial. And then from here, it's just a repeat, right? I'm doing my best to get aggro. I'm throwing Death and Decay down. I'm trying to grip guys in. I'm popping defensives for that crush. And then these defensives kind of overlap with dealing with these hatchlings. I chain that into rune weapon, etc., etc. But there we have it, guys. Hopefully this video helps you and your group get your portals. And if it does, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content like it. As always, I need to give a huge thank you to my amazing Patreon supporters for everything that they do. And I'll see everyone in the next video.